Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode of Fake Accents Unite. It's a pleasure to have you all here with us. I am joined, as always, by the ineffable Britisher. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Marvellous. I know you've all been starving for a Fake Accents Unite this last couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I was entertaining friends for,
yes, that's what we call it these days, is it?
the last...
Last I heard,
what
it
was
had
your
something
theory?
to do. Last I heard, it had something to do with you being visited by an entire ladies' netball team.
Now, you say entire ladies' netball team. I say two very lovely, one Polish, one Lithuanian ladies who came down to see me this week. So that was good fun. And obviously, things take priority. But we are glad to be back.
It took you an entire week to recover.
I mean...
It's not as if we've really been hearing much from you during the week.
Well, I mean, they didn't stay for one day. I mean, really, got to make the most of these encounters. But there we are. Good evening to everybody in the chat. I can see a lot of the regulars here: Harry and Gladive, Object of Hate, Jury Rigging, Makuta Pterodax, and more. It is a pleasure to see you. What was he talking about? Oh, yes, I must offer my sincere apologies. We should be joined by Sarah, aka Daughter of Albion, later this evening.
That's the only reason any of them are here listening to us.
If she reads the message that I have sent her, giving her the link, but she can be quite forgetful on occasion. So please forgive her if she doesn't turn up. That's quite all right. And secondly, I said that Sargon of Akkad would be on this week. Don't despair. He's not on this evening, but he will be on tomorrow. So there'll be another stream tomorrow. The academic,
as I commented earlier, that's more than likely due to this evening being the sort of bi-weekly meeting of the Swindon LGBTQ plus branch.
If that's what you want to call UKIP Southwest, then yes, that's entirely accurate. Basically, yes, he's got this meeting, so he's agreed to come on tomorrow, and the academic agent has also decided that as he doesn't want to split the viewership, that he's going to basically delay unpopular opinions till Wednesday. So it all works out. You don't have to stint on any of your favourite content. Hopefully it should be pretty good. So it's going as jumped in with a super chat and says, you're 1,986 seconds late. Regardless, I look forward to news from the lawless country. Also, bring Sarah, makes things even better, even with the Britisher here.
They're quite pedantic, aren't they, those Scandinavians?
They can be, yes. Apart from when they're being very blunt. And I don't mean their personalities, I mean the battle
You mean their axes?
Yes. Sorry, just cooling my tea down there a little bit. So,
what tea are we drinking today?
I am drinking, I tell you what, I'm a little bit effeminate today. I'm drinking a Lady Grey.
Lady Grey?
But in order to counterbalance the Lady Grey, I do have a pint of Stella Artois for afterwards. Sitting next to it.
The Lady Grey is just to make up for the sheer amounts of testosterone that you've been oozing over the last week with your various visitors.
You do like to make me feel. You do like to make me feel better, and it is working. Don't ever stop. But there we are.
Well, meanwhile, I'm just sticking to the bog standard mug of Yorkshire tea.
Well, you always were a classicist.
Well, there is that, yes.
But no.
Much as I'm straining to say the Romans did, I'm afraid the Romans didn't know Yorkshire tea. But
are you a fan actually of a channel called The Spiffing Brit?
No, that's not someone I can say I know of. The Spiffing Brit.
It
has a ring to it.
He's not he's not a political channel. He does do gaming, but he is not sponsored by Yorkshire Tea, but always plugs them in every video that he does. And so he has these little skits where it ends up rolling around to promote Yorkshire Tea halfway through. It's quite funny.
That sounds eminently watchable, to be honest.
To be honest, yeah, you could try. And he has a rather good accent. You can hear a Britisher adding his subscription right now. And by the end of the week, he'll be playing Skyrim with the rest of us.
I definitely approve of the avatar.
Certainly.
I'm not sure whether I'll warm to watching someone else play computer games.
He's in breaking computer games, but I mean, you see what you like. The key to godhood, Yorkshire Tea, yes. Let me see what we've got. You massive bender with that combination. Oh, Binary Surfer accusing me of being homosexual for drinking both Stella and tea in a single sitting. But we'll see.
Well, it just means that in your case, it will be your boyfriend you'll be beating up.
Oh no! It's like I watched a comedy skit the other year, and it's just like I think it was actually Frankie Boyle before he turned a bit too political, and he said I always thought that it was really stupid of kids to make fun of the kid with the gay dads, because it used to be like, oh, my dad will beat up your dad, and it's like, yeah, my dad will fuck your dad. It's just like, okay, getting
well, there's an angle, yeah.
Makuta Pterodax says, us up north in Yorkshire have so many Viking words. There are some linguists who believe that tykes, that's Yorkshiremen for the uneducated, don't speak English, but a dialect of Norse. Hashtag bring back the Danelaw, make York Jorvik again.
Yes, what can one say? I think that the further away we stay from those Scandinavians, the better.
Is that only because
if there were a way of floating the island a little further out into the Atlantic, I think we would.
Is that only because you spent so much time avoiding the country through history that you're unaware of much of its history?
That one somewhat confused me. I think much of the audience will kind of struggle also to kind of follow what actually you were trying to say there.
You are an ageless being who has transcended time and space.
Well,
you have traveled the length and breadth of the earth, but you've always avoided Scandinavia because you didn't like them very much, and as a result are unaware of the history of the Scandinavians.
Oh, I was there once or twice. There was nothing there worth seeing.
Savage. But on to the news, which is, of course, why everyone watches, not for our personalities, clearly. But before we do that, actually, since Cohen jumps in and says, don't make me bring a list of how many English words are from the Danes and Norwegians. Also, you say that, Britisher, but you are jealous of our laws.
Laws? Scandinavian? Laws?
It's a bit of an oxymoronic statement,
yes,
by the sounds of things.
I'm sure Scandinavia is more than likely some sort of Old Norse word for lawless place.
He has also added on that you're not entirely wrong, Britisher, when you say there's nothing to do and there's nothing to see in Scandinavia. Why do you think we came to pillage and rape you?
Well, yes, that's just it. That was pretty much their version of sort of daytime television, wasn't it?
Mm. But now I must address the title of our stream, the title being the Boris Broadcasting Corporation Edition.
Ah, I didn't know that this stream had a title.
Of course you don't. You never read the stream title, even though you retweet the tweet which says the title in it. You just see my name, you instantly need to retweet, don't you, Britt?
Oh, of course. I mean, how else could it be?
So, obviously, it's been around a week now since Boris ascended. I had so many different titles that I could have made for this particular stream. I was, the Boris Ascendancy edition, the Return of the God Emperor or something along those lines.
The Boris Supremacy.
Yes, anything. The Boris Ultimatum. It could have gone either way, but. I was watching his opening speeches and his dealing with the opposition. Let's call them the opposition in the House of Commons. All very entertaining. I'm not sure if there was too much substance, but entertaining. I think the only things that he managed to do were make pledges, all of which have yet to come to fruition anyway. So. Things like the 20,000 new police officers, when the head of the police has just come to him and gone, we don't have the money for that at the moment, and you haven't assigned us the money for that. So it's going to be interesting to see how he manages to pull that one off. But what do you make of old Bojo?
Well,
dear leader.
I see him seeing his role as being, first and foremost, as a bit of a cheerleader. I was saying in the week that was that it's. I think there are certain similarities between Boris and Trump, in that they both kind of see themselves as people who just by enthusiasm alone seek to move things.
Yes, they are enthusiastic,
and I can see to a certain extent there is something to it. But it only works if you have people who are actually able to put things into practice. So it's good enough for you to be kind of the one with the pom-poms and the short skirt, but somebody else needs to then actually be the one who makes the play, if you know what I mean. And the question there is, are there the people around Boris? Now, as such, I think sort of, a week in, I think we still have to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Oh, he hasn't had time to do anything. He's just about managed his cabinet reshuffle. Everyone's settling into new jobs. Yes,
but I think that is pretty much sort of the measure of it. That he's definitely changed the tone, and I think in that regard, having somebody, particularly at the head of the United Kingdom, who is basically saying, "Of course we can do it,"
well,
is definitely a new, sort of a substantively new tone, if you know what I mean.
I was watching it, and as much as I generally over the years have detested the how should we put it, the theatre that is the Commons, right? I'm not particularly I'd much rather that people got on and just did the job of running the country. At the same time, it's kind of scary what they would think to achieve if they stopped their squabbling quite so much and ended up doing it. But it is a marked difference between Theresa May's kind of quite quiet, relatively standoffish, clearly scripted sort of put downs in the Commons, and how boring she was compared to Boris coming in there and saying, in his customary way, they have reprogrammed him. He's become a Remainer. I thought it was just fantastic reality TV.
Peter Mandelson has already seized the moment and immediately claimed that the Labour Party need a new leader who can take on Boris Johnson.
Oh, of course they do. Of course they do. What has been interesting as well, the Liberal Democrats, you may have noticed, ran a campaign trying to push for a vote of no confidence instantly as soon as Boris was there.
That's nothing. What's he called? The openly gay chap. The one who resigned from the Foreign Office a day or two before.
Baker?
Alan Duncan,
No,
is it? Alan Duncan.
Okay, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
He sought to, not only did he seek to and fail, he sought to table a vote of no confidence in Boris Johnson.
That was right, yeah.
And complained when John Bercow turned it down. And Boris Johnson hadn't even been made Prime Minister yet.
Yep.
So he was complaining that he couldn't schedule a vote of no confidence against Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, even though Boris Johnson was not yet Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Get your head round that one, ladies and gentlemen.
Not to mention, but of course, when Boris did come up, they tried again. The Lib Dems definitely tried again. The Greens got behind it, and they asked Jeremy Corbyn whether he would back it, and he refused. And the main reason was, I saw in quite a niche article, I think from The Spectator, that was talking about it, point out that the reason he had turned this down was not because he supports Boris, but the ensuing kind of bureaucratic nightmare that would then ensue from there would likely last to the end of the year, and to at least past October 31st, and there would be no way to stop Boris's pre-tabled motion of, if we can't sort it out by October 31st, we leave with no deal regardless.
Well, that's
there was no way to. There was no way to block it, and so if he's now trapped in a hard place where you can't get rid of Boris Johnson if you're the opposition, because if you do so, it'll trigger too much bureaucracy and the date will pass. You can't really let him go through with it if he does what you think he's going to do, which is attempt to negotiate. The EU turns him down, no deal anyway. So it's kind of there. And at the same time, Jeremy Corbyn, much as he's going, Labour would have to take a Remain stance. Should we run all this stuff again? He doesn't really care. He's always been a Eurosceptic for his entire career.
I think it's not just as straightforward as that. I think everything is being, all the chips have been thrown back up in the air, and they're all sort of, they've all come down and now they're lying higgledy-piggledy across the table service. So when it came to Theresa May, we know she had a wafer-thin majority, but in many things she didn't have a majority because there was the group around Jacob Rees-Mogg and whatever who at times when it came to European matters they would be against it and she would lose her majority.
I know you were being serious, but I when you said wafer thin, I immediately assumed you were going to say personality.
Well, yes, there is that. Well, then again, I wouldn't refer to wafers. I would refer to cigarette papers when it would come to the personality and the thinness of it when it comes to Theresa May. But when it comes to it now, I think they need to kind of first work out the parliamentary arithmetic, and nothing has happened yet. They haven't had any votes. So when it comes to the group that is sort of clustered around the Dominic Greaves and the kind of the rebels against Boris Johnson, the Alan Duncans of this world.
Yes.
How many people are they? So what was it called? The ERG, wasn't it? That was the group around Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Yes, the
European Research Group or whatever they called themselves.
Yes, that's the one.
One didn't have any numbers coming from them, but throughout various votes, one began to kind of realize how many people they roughly had among their ranks. But right now, what is the nature of Boris Johnson's majority? We just don't know. We have no idea.
And we won't know probably till he calls a general election, which could be anywhere up for the next 3 years.
Well, I don't know. I mean, once parliamentary business starts kicking off, we may begin to kind of get an idea as to how many of the folks don't back this somewhat right-wing shift, somewhat Brexiteer shift that Boris Johnson has brought about. So I think it's fair to say, the Dominic Greaves are going to be against him. But, where, for example, does Ken Clarke stand? At one moment, very strongly pro-European, definitely against Brexit, but at the same time, a Conservative Party grandee. And for someone like that,
who has to toe the line,
it would be pretty hard for him to go against the Conservative Party Prime Minister, if you know what I mean. So
what was it Jacob Rees-Mogg said? He said, I don't personally agree with it, but it's now the party policy, so it's now my position.
I mean, we also had someone like John Major say that he would actually try and bring a judicial challenge against Boris Johnson's position if he tried to do a no-deal Brexit. So here is an ex-prime minister, a Tory prime minister, threatening legal action against the present Tory prime minister. Now, how does that play within the Conservative Party itself? So it's when you've got such things going on that I think if you're the leader of the opposition and you've got a vote of no confidence coming up, you kind of, you can't do too many votes of no confidence before eventually you don't have any credibility yourself. So if you bring one, you kind of want to make it count.
Yes.
And therefore you want to know what the lay of the land is. And I think that's what Corbyn is waiting for. He's kind of wanting to get an idea of, look, does this stand any chance at all?
Yeah, no, I can understand that, definitely. I have to say I have a couple of favourite moments, to be honest, from the past week, but one of them has to be Boris I can't find the image now, it's really irritating me. But Boris unveiled his new cabinet, and you could see Michael Gove there, and it might be the first. It might have been the first parliamentary session when they're all sitting in the making their statements, and you can see the look on Gove's face whenever Boris talks. And I think I saw one or two memes on Twitter which were just like, "He's going to stab you in the back. He wants to stab you." It's just.
Yes, I believe I refer to him on Twitter as Michael Brutus Cassius Gove. It really is one of those where I kind of ask myself, what on earth is that person doing in the cabinet?
It's quite impressive, isn't it? Like even now, the loyalty to what the party expect. I suppose he knows what Gove's like now. He's not got any surprises for him. for Boris, that is. So if Boris appoints Gove and he can keep an eye on the devil that he knows, rather than having someone else who may or may not, because he's got to keep the Gove supporting rebels, as it were, how few as they are, under his wing.
We could always ask the nation's leading Gove expert who has joined the stream. That is, if her microphone is working.
Hi, is it working okay?
It is, yes.
No, we can't hear you at all.
It's a little echoey on
we
my
can't
end.
hear a single word that you're
Just
saying.
refrain from referring to any of us as retards, and then YouTube will block you. Yes.
I didn't do anything.
Who did you call a retard, Sarah?
I didn't. It's not a word I would usually use. It was definitely. I deserved a slap on the wrist for it, but not a suspension.
Not a suspension. Have you got a new handle now, or?
No, I tried making a new account. Can't even do that.
Oh my goodness!
They're 3 steps ahead of me. Can't use any of my accounts.
But it is a temporary ban, is it?
I actually don't know. I've emailed them twice and they've not replied. So we'll see. It says suspension, but not a ban. I don't know.
What you're saying is I'm going to end up becoming a middleman for anyone who wants to get you on a stream now.
You see, the strange thing is that sometimes some of those companies like using the word suspension as in ban. That's the, it's almost as if they themselves don't quite know the use of the term, if you know what I mean. Because suspension would it would imply something temporary.
Yes, it would, but I haven't been given a...
people being told that they're suspended and it means a ban.
Hang on, I'm just looking through my emails now to see. No, they haven't responded. I miss my memes.
Well, I think it's quite clear from which angle we need to approach this, and that is we need to start accusing Twitter of misogyny.
Yes.
And at least minor animal abuse.
Yeah.
I see the bunny. Right, that makes sense.
No, I'm calling you a dog, Sarah.
Conduct. No.
Clearly, this is an issue of a female Twitter user being singled out.
Also, disability with my asthma.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that makes it even worse.
Oh, I know. I'm so disappointed. I did go a bit far, maybe. But
can you actually sort of let us into what exactly occurred?
I believe it was regarding I don't know who it was who made the post. I think it was Alyssa Massano, who's some far lefty.
Okay.
She posted a picture of Mike Pence. Is it? Who was at
the vice president?
Yes. Mr. Pence. He said. Oh no! She put a picture of him at these concentration camps next to a picture of Heinrich Himmler.
Okay.
And I just called her a retard. A fucking retard.
Okay, and somehow she took sufficient offence.
No, it was within seconds. I assume it was some kind of algorithm because it immediately shut down.
Oh, so this was one particular word that was immediately spotted.
I assume so. Yes. Damn it! I've used all sorts of words on there before.
You're going to give us a list of your profane saying.
That is actually the nature of Twitter, isn't it? That you're supposed to use words. It's just rather interesting that it would be funny, wouldn't it, if someone were to post "hoist by your own petard."
Well,
and
I love that.
Would accidentally misspell it.
I would like the poetic irony.
Immediately would get shut down.
I like that. I like that very much.
I do on occasion insult the academic agent quite publicly.
He asks for it.
Threatened to cut. I threatened to cut his liver out with a spoon and eat it, in the hopes that Twitter will one day ban me for the same offence that he was originally banned for all those years ago.
Never forget.
But that is quite funny.
Well, yes, it was a little bit disrespectful of me. I understand that.
Maybe a little bit. Need to be disrespected.
I mean, I obviously, I know I'm rubbing salt into the wounds, but I've just had my own little Twitter milestone this week.
Oh,
and then taken away from you, and then got back again.
Yes, precisely. Yes, I went past 5,000 followers.
Oh my gosh, that's huge!
And
congratulations.
As I went past 5,000 followers, I put a tweet out saying, past 5,000 followers, thank you very much. Within 2 minutes, I was at 4,997.
Perfect.
Let me guess. Academic agent was one of the first to.
Well, I mean, I didn't even know the Britisher had a Twitter account after
That's so
that.
funny.
It was like I'd never even met him.
That's a little excessive. Are you sure they're not mixing you up with, I don't know.
Well, it's since, I mean, now I seem to be in a safe place. I think it would need organization, because now I seem to be at about 5,060.
Just get a mass unsubbing from the British.
So I'm no longer just
just humble bragging sort of on a stream.
2 or 3 above 5,000.
That's quite a decent number.
Well, it's useful because yes, it helps when you're trying to draw attention to something that's happening on YouTube. So just like with this one,
you just like being popular.
If you can retweet that you're on a stream, more eyeballs get to see it.
That's very true.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go through a couple of super chats that have passed us by. Also, let me see how many super chats have we? How much have we had? I tell you what, if we can double the amount of super chats we have now, I'll show you my dog on stream. There we go. But we'll see. Basically, and that's not a euphemism. It is an actual dog. Anyway, Jay.
Yes, I have visions of sort of Hitler saluting dogs appearing on stream. Yeah,
of course you do. JS has donated £2. Thank you very much. And says, "Seen the Toby Young piece on Boris and Quillette." I was going to read that, but it's 120 pages or something, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I think someone sent me the link, and it's sort of I saw how much it was and thought, yeah, thank you, I'll pass.
It's a complete profile of Boris Johnson, and it is let me see, quite long. Yes, many pages, many.
Is there a blurb?
Oh, it's not too bad actually. The Iconoclast is there. It's not too bad actually. I'm gonna have to give it a read.
I like the Iconoclast.
We may go through it later. I'm trying to see what he's posted. Fine. I'm just gonna find the page. Iconoclast. Yeah, basically he's just arguing with people about why Brexit is good and how it should be a benefit to the country. But there we go. Cometh the hour, cometh the man, a profile of Boris Johnson. So I tell you what, we might go through that later in the stream.
Well, yes, but one has to be a bit skeptical when one hears something like that. So here is a lifetime Tory supporter, and now the kind of more right-wing, classical kind of style Tory has come in, and suddenly he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And you just think, wouldn't there be a certain similarity to that and, I don't know, Jeremy Corbyn coming in and what Owen Jones would have to say?
Yeah,
you know full well.
One's preferable to the other, though.
But you know how politics works. Everyone gets hyped and excited over whoever's coming, or they get disgusted and upset about whoever's coming.
Yeah.
The person comes in, both groups do their little song and dance, and then everyone hates them in 6 months, right?
Yes.
So, let him have his moment of courage there.
Yes,
but you have to remember as well, Britisher, he's had just enough of time to promise all that he's going to promise, and not enough time to fuck any of it up yet.
Yes, so as we were alluding to earlier. Yes. What I would just like, we all remember that meme, don't we, of that woman in the woolly hat screaming at the sky at
that was a meme. That was real life.
Well, yes, but it's effectively become a meme, hasn't it? Screaming at the sky at hearing that Donald Trump has won the election. Basically, what would someone like that have said had Hillary Clinton won? She would have been gushing and whatever. And that's just it. I wouldn't really have too much interest in hearing what she would have had to say if Hillary Clinton had won. Do you understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's this kind of the commentariat of the cheerleaders that I always find somewhat off-putting. If that makes any sense.
I mean, in the same sense,
120 pages from Toby Young is not necessarily.
I'm overblowing it when I say 120 pages, but it is a relatively long piece. But I don't know. I was not very positive on Boris before he was elected. I've enjoyed his speeches and his general bumbling around in the first week. I've enjoyed Jacob Rees-Mogg moving to the front bench, which is not something I expected him to take up. Given his many his prostrations about how he was not going to he would never take or be offered a cabinet position because of his many children, that sort of thing.
How many people need to be taken out for Jacob Rees-Mogg to become PM?
I don't know. He's never been in the running. He could now be in the running, but he would have to ascend to Home Secretary or something like that.
Well, to be honest, he's not a Secretary of State, is he? He's
no,
a minister.
He's just the leader of the House.
Yes, but I mean that effectively qualifies him as a minister.
Yeah,
but he's not the leader of a great department.
No. He's not the minister. He's not got a Bernard.
Yes, that's the way to put it, I guess. Yes, not a Bernard.
No. Yes, but have we seen anything else really that Boris has done? I know Trump tweeted about him earlier in the week, saying he's the British Trump. All of Britain wants him. They just whether they know it or not, basically, which was interesting to say the least, because I don't think Trump's grasp of the British mindset is quite as good as he may claim. But
yes, the fact that that Boris is now Prime Minister shows apparently that we love Trump. That's the way I remember him interpreting it. So basically, he kind of pointed out that Boris Johnson was seen as the British Trump. Thus, the fact that Boris Johnson has now become Prime Minister shows that the British really love Trump. I heard him sort of, make that.
Well, it's the natural
conclusion.
Clearly, the natural progression of things. I don't know about you, but suddenly I've just completely softened on Trump. He's never done anything wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, if there were any person you would wish to be stuck in a lift with, I mean, his would be the first name to spring to mind, of course.
I mean, you could take his hair off and use it as a fan if it got too hot. So.
Yeah, I mean, who would want to be stuck with Scarlett Johansson? If you could have
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, yes.
He's got the necessary equipment for me, so.
Yes. Sarah doesn't.
I probably would.
Sarah doesn't want to play around with Scarlett Johansson.
And of course he's got the hair.
Well, not since she became a feminist, no. Yes, the hair, of course. Blonde bombshell.
Tim Cornish has donated $10. Thank you very much. It says Boris derangement syndrome crescendos towards full pandemic. Mirror progression.
Yes, that is true.
Based on Trump derangement syndrome. And yeah, I've seen all sorts of people who seem to think that, you can hear, the classic like, oh, oh, hey, oh, like in the background as they talk about him, as the fires of hell start burning in their eyes, describing the fresh climate emergency that he's ignoring at the moment. I often see that's the big thing at the moment is someone I can't remember. I think it might have been Caroline Lucas tweeted out that we have something like 18 months to save the Earth at this point.
Oh, 18 months.
18 months. I was like, oh my goodness, like it feels like a doomsday preacher. The ones who are like, oh, the rapture is coming on this date. I've worked it out from this sort of thing. This sort of thing that would end up on a Simpsons episode if it was.
Then what am I doing trying to save the climate?
And they're like,
bugger it, just go wild.
Sarah's just like living for today. Who cares about the next?
Moi le déluge, I believe is the name.
But the idea. But I was reading up some stats on climate change, and it was just really interesting to find out how little globally Britain contributes, given that we are the 5th largest economy. And they worked out that if we were to become, as Theresa May has pledged us to be, completely and utterly carbon neutral by 2050, in fact, if it was to happen next week, it was something along the region of like 0.5% or something of all emissions would be removed. And within 12 weeks, India and China combined would have made up the deficit because they're building so many coal-fired power plants. So like the idea that, Extinction Rebellion or whatever are gluing themselves to the tarmac in major cities around the country until we do something is kind of farcical when you consider how small our impact is globally. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not against doing things greenly, but like there's doing things greenly. And then we're actually a pretty green country when it comes to how we do things. And like Jeremy Corbyn's been jumping on it really badly. He's been, I may say badly, he's been pushing the there's a tidal project somewhere. Corbyn backed in
the Bristol
estuary.
Channel or whatever.
It's not quite the Bristol. It's the estuary, and I can't remember Back's tidal. Let me see. Mersey, that's the one. So Merseyside tidal.
Oh, that would be Liverpool. Yes, I thought he meant the one in Bristol, but because there was one planned there once at some point.
Oh, probably. The biggest problem that Britain has, for anyone who's not familiar with a little bit of geography, climatography, all that sort of stuff, we have the unique problem that our waves are too high energy. We have some of the highest energy waves for the particular ocean that we're in. So it means that any tidal project that we tend to build gets ripped apart. Now, I'm not saying that this one's going to fail or whatever, but I wouldn't put I wouldn't bet on this as a single project. Jeremy Corbyn pretending that he has an extra £4 billion to spend on Mersey tidal project as well. Classic Labour position. But so if we could do things green in a green way, and it's profitable and it provides the energy we need, I'm all for it. At the same time, look at the bigger picture. Look at the lives that be ruined. Look at the economic impact, and look at the actual impact on global climate change overall compared to everyone else. I mean, the whole idea is farcical. In the same way of the immigration debate, there's a really good talk on immigration. I can't remember which doctor did it, but he basically does it with gumballs and jars. I don't know if you've seen that one.
It's very good, yeah.
And he points out that each gumball is like 100,000 people or something like that, and he picks up, X number of gumballs and then works it out. And he's done a follow-up to that particular talk where he now describes it, because he did it back in the 90s, back when the population was half what it is now. And he does an updated version, and it's even more ludicrous, which is why a representation of why borders are actually, and an immigration policy is actually quite a good idea. Worth checking out. Anyway, I'm aware that I'm rambling here, but
no.
There we go.
That's a good video, that one. I've seen that one. Very, very telling.
So, for goodness sake. So Skoen has donated 200 kroner. so the dog will be coming at the end of the stream, definitely.
Yeah.
Let me see what we have. Dominic Raab stares menacingly at everything. Says Joe Neverton supremacist. Is it a Joe Neverton supremacist? You can message me this just in normal chat. But are you the sort of the upgraded version of the original Joe Neverton? Did you get banned or something, or did you just upgrade yourself? Who knows? And then Skoen says, in the name of Dannebrog, righteousness, and the chat, I claim the long-eared one, especially since I found out she can have a naughty tongue, brackets not like that. Sarah, would you care to respond?
You cut out very, very slightly then, sorry. I don't want to make you read it again because it sounds rude, but...
Where did I cut out?
Well, could you read it all again?
I could read it all again. I'll tell you what.
Sorry, I didn't want to read and interrupt. But...
Let me see. Okay. Skoen says, in the name of Dannebrog, righteousness, and the chat, I claim the long-eared one, especially since I found out she can have a naughty tongue, brackets not like that.
Well, what's the definition of claiming?
I mean, he is Scandinavian, so, think pillage and that other thing.
Let me know how good your credit score is, and then we can talk.
Makuta Pterodax donates £5 and says, did you see that FBP tweet? Oh, I can't stand FBP ears. What's it stand for again? Follow back pro-European, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, just
gross.
Ugh. Anyway, that basically said the patriotic thing to do would be to assassinate Nigel Farage. He's not even the Prime Minister. Although, speaking of Nigel, because he's been, as far as I'm aware, relatively quiet. The only thing I've heard from him this week is that he said that he would be loath to join forces with the Tories. He would never do such a thing. He's more likely to align the Brexit Party with Labour leavers than he is with the Tory Party, which I thought was an interesting statement.
Well, there is one interesting thing there, because just before you were talking about Jo Swinson from the Lib Dems, and
insufferable woman, yes,
she had, apparently there's been some sort of collaboration with the Greens and Plaid Cymru in, being pro-European parties, and therefore sort of having a somewhat of an alliance, as in not all standing in the same constituency, if you know what I mean. And she has let it be known on the back of that, oh, well, come the next general election, the Lib Dems would not necessarily be standing in all constituencies.
Oh, really?
And you sort of think, oh, well, now that's a big announcement, because the Lib Dems are a national party. They stand in all constituencies.
Yeah.
And when she says something like that, you sort of think, well, hang on a moment, Plaid Cymru, Greens, left wing, Lib Dems, left wing. And then you're thinking, with the Labour Party kind of now making a lot of Remain noises, would they be willing to work with them? Because if the left suddenly decide to collaborate in order to maximise their votes, what would that mean for Brexit and the Brexit Party and the Conservatives?
Yes, I mean, as far as I'm aware, if the Liberal Dems effectively, in the same way that who was it? The BNP removed all of their, as minor and ineffectual as the BNP are now, they removed their candidates in the last general election so that Labour wouldn't have any competition.
Really?
It's their thing. They backed Jeremy Corbyn.
Really? I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah,
wow. That seems like a bit of an incomprehensible move.
It's bizarre, isn't it? But they quite like his anti-Semitism. Let's just put it that way.
Pro-immigration?
Who knows what the BNP really think? They're all a bit quackers. But,
are they still a... I didn't even realise they were really still a party.
It only needs to be two people to be a party. So, who knows?
True.
But, so...
well, here's our chance to start our party.
What, the three of us? What would we even call ourselves? Ideas in the chat, other than the 20 years old party for the many memes of Britisher being 20.
The National Film Institute.
Let me see. I quite like the Film Actors Guild, just for the.
I like the idea of a guild.
The Film Actors Guild.
Film Actors is a bit. I don't know. Arthurian Knights Guild.
I'm more just going for the acronym there, Sarah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's a reference to Team America, and they have.
I see. Okay, that one passed over my head.
They have Alec Baldwin standing at the front, going, "In 20 years, people will be standing in clean cities and saying, thanks, fag.' Wow, you did such a great job, fag." It's just. I love that. I love that film. It's just quite funny. Nice going, fag. No, the Arthurian Knights Guild. Oh, I can get around that. Yeah. Anything Arthurian is really up my street. So.
Me too.
If we could add in anything which is mildly Kafkaesque and a little bit of Lovecraftian horror, that could also work. But I'm sorry. We were talking about a political party, not anything else. Right. Homophobia reported from the chat. Yes, marvelous. Lovely. People saying, give Trey and Matt some credit, you cretin. I mean, they did produce the film, but obviously. Anyway, Britisher once claimed he wasn't alive during the Churchill years. Why haven't you called out this blatant bullshit yet?
That feels like a far-right dog whistle to me.
It's your chance to address the masses for why you lied to them about your age.
Well, it wasn't really that. I mean, it more than likely was some sort of shorthand of my saying I wasn't alive, because
he was fighting for the Germans.
What happens with us, immortal types, is that once in a while we need to hibernate.
Oh, I see, and that's your description.
Yes.
Are you sure you don't reject? Are you sure you're not for goodness sake, the word
I mean, obviously,
reincarnated.
Sarah is already trying to make out that I fought on the side of the Germans.
To make it out, you speak fluent German. You weren't raised in Britain. You were raised on the continent in a nation we're not allowed to know about. Clearly, this was Germany.
Well, but then again, I mean, maybe I might have been involved with a British department for which German speaking might have been required, but about which I can't tell you anything.
Klaus, we all know that back in the day you were the Wehrmachter, not the British.
Oh, actually, today it was on YouTube. I saw a fantastic clip. It really it was about some Belgian aristocrat.
Go on.
Who I think he was in the cavalry at the time of the German invasion. So he kind of had to get out of Belgium, then obviously into France, and then more than likely via Dunkirk or some other means he got to Britain.
Did he wear a pith helmet?
He did not wear a pith helmet, I'm afraid. He then lied about his age in order to get into the RAF because he would have been too old otherwise.
Yeah.
And became quite a successful pilot. And eventually he kind of got to fly the Hawker Typhoon. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So for those people listening out there who don't know, the Hawker Typhoon isn't really a fighter. It's a fighter bomber. So it's something with which to sort of do ground attacks. So it had
show a picture.
It had quite feisty guns on it with which you could really punch some holes into, things like trains and whatever. And what happened then was he was constantly sort of arguing, oh, well, we should attack some Belgian targets, and Command never wanted to know about it. Well, what also is worth pointing out is his father had been killed by the Gestapo. So he really had it in for them. He wanted to get even. And at one point then, there was a raid in which he and a wingman were sent off to Ghent to attack a railway track or something. And he, rather conspicuously, had every single possible weapon imaginable attached to his plane.
Nice.
And he flew off to Ghent with his wingman. They took on the train line, or whether there was a train on it or not, I don't know. And then came time to turn round. And he simply told his wingman, well, you go. I've still got something else to do. What the rest of the conversation is, we don't know. So obviously the wingman, a bit nonplussed, kind of went back to Britain. And he, meanwhile, headed for Brussels. And what he knew was that the Gestapo was quartered in a very particular building in Brussels. And it was a kind of tall building that kind of stood out, so you would be able to spot it.
Yes, the European Union headquarters.
And he flew low in order not to be detected by radar or anything, and came in over Brussels low, and then dipped down right into the avenue. So basically, he was pretty much flying at, sort of between the buildings as he came down the avenue towards that Gestapo building. And as he approached, he opened up with everything he had.
Nice.
And he ripped through that building and then pulled up over the building and circled around and went back home. So he basically emptied everything he had into that building.
Yeah.
Of course, by the time he got back, there was a rather frosty reception. You can imagine the RAF didn't like the idea of pilots going off on private little ventures. But then sooner or later, news emerged as to just what stunt he had pulled off. That this guy had gone low into the cityscape and had attacked the Gestapo headquarters. The head of the Brussels Gestapo was killed. The second in command of the Brussels Gestapo was killed. It just, a long list of names that you could just tick off. I mean, because, if you let loose with guns which are designed to stop trains and things, and you let loose with something like that on a building, you can imagine what an effect it will have.
Somewhat busted.
Yes, indeed. So, yes, believe it or not, he was then issued with the Distinguished Flying Cross
Marvelous. I tell you, this is one of the strangest ways you've revealed one of your life stories to us, Britisher. I mean, really.
No. I'm sorry. I draw the line there. I will never admit to being Belgian.
Oh, I see. No, but you might have been masquerading. You put on a false beard or something. Yeah, much as I've done now.
My having been a supposedly Belgian aristocracy, that's where I draw the line. Because apparently he was an aristocrat. Yeah.
I tell you, I've been watching classic Blackadder.
Oh well, there you go.
This past week, and that's been fantastic. I do like the way in which, particularly at the end of season 2, at the end of the aristocracy, he ascends to aristocracy because the king is mad and mistakes him for his son.
Yes, so, yes. That's after the duel with miniature cannons goes somewhat wrong, isn't it?
It's like, we don't do it with swords anymore. Get with the times. Load your cannon. And the what is it? The cigar case, is it? Or cigarillo case blocks the cannonball. And then George comes out and says, "I must protest. I am actually the prince." And he ends up shooting him instead. And he goes, "I also have a cigarillo case. Oh, damn, I must have left it on the dresser." And dies.
Well, I've just been enjoying some Seinfeld recently. I never really watched much of that series. I was familiar with it. I'd seen some episodes. But yes, I must admit, I can see why there was so much noise about it. But I think nowadays a lot of people say Seinfeld wasn't really that special because that many later television comedy series learnt from what they did, and therefore, to a certain extent, that style that at the time was unique kind of eventually became ubiquitous.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can sort of see it's very, very well put together, very well written.
Okay. Britisher, I've just seen a comment in the chat from Shouting Horse, which says, "I bet Britisher wears a cravat. Do you?"
I have been known sometimes to wear a cravat. I don't make a general rule of it every day. But I have in the past worn a cravat. I will admit to that.
Sarah will back me up on this, I'm sure. But your next piece of art that you need to commission is you wearing a cravat and possibly an evening gown as well, sitting in an old leather-backed armchair, and you need to produce a series called Britisher Reads. And just let yourself go.
Here is an interesting one for you. The word cravat comes from Croat.
Mm-hmm.
That basically, Croatian mercenaries were quite sought after, and they had this kind of necktie, and therefore the necktie eventually became associated with them. And because they, the word for them in their own language was hravat, that became the name for the actual necktie.
Very nice.
So cravat actually is apparently Croat.
Huh. So it's going donated, as I say, 200 krona. Thank you very much. It says, "This should cover the rest of the super chats for the doggo." Also, Sarah, hypergamy much? You're assuming his equipment works. Wink. I think that's because I cut out part of the way through there. So apparently you're being hypergamous because of that, Sarah. What do you say to that?
We seem to have lost Sarah for the moment. She's got the icon on that her mic is off, so she may have just.
Oh yes, sorry, I was talking away there, didn't I? I turned it off to eat a cherry. Sorry. Is he suggesting that I'm batting above my average?
So you were popping a cherry whilst you were off.
Popping a cherry.
Yeah. He said, "Sarah, hypergamy much? You're assuming that my equipment works." Wink.
No, wasn't that a reference at the time to Donald Trump's equipment?
I assume this is about my microphone not working because I choose to be innocent in this and assume there's no sexual innuendo being made there.
Well, I mean, I can well imagine that Sarah would be attracted to the equipment of the most powerful man in the world.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
I am powerful, but I don't know about the most powerful in the world. But but the chat are now saying, "Leave the mic on, Sarah, for ASMR cherry eating."
I got some strawberries too in a fridge.
He says it was Trump's equipment in the elevator. There we go.
Well, of course, when it comes to cherries, we have the Romans to thank.
Oh, okay. I think I do need this.
We always have the Romans to thank.
Especially General Lucullus.
Oh.
Did they open the trade route that made it all possible?
No, they found them in Cappadocia. The cherry tree was local. It was domestic to Cappadocia, which is in Turkey.
Oh.
And with him passing through the area with his army, he saw these cherry trees and thought, well, now that's something special. So he had some unearthed, with the root ball and all, keeping it in earth, put onto ships and shipped back to Italy.
Oh.
That's how the cherry tree got to Europe, and then the Romans started spreading it all over Europe.
Oh, it's like a nice way of describing what also happened with the Black Plague.
Well, yes, there is that.
Cappadocia, is that it? I'm sure is that where they have those really nice hot air balloon festivals? It's very pretty. I'm sure I've seen.
Well, Cappadocia is sort of a mountainous but fairly barren place, from what I understand.
I'm looking it up now. It is for sure. People should look it up. It's pretty.
I don't know much about Cappadocia.
I think these cherries are from. Where are they from?
Well, isn't there sort of I think in parts of Cappadocia, because it's such a mountainous place and so rocky. I think there are some places where there were pretty much troglodytes, who kind of lived. Troglodytes tend to be people who are referred to as living in caves, but these are kind of man-made caves that are carved out of the rock.
I actually got called a troglodyte today.
Yes, it does tend to be a handy insult, doesn't it?
I was setting up my stream earlier today, and my mother called me a troglodyte because I have to lock the stream room away, and she's like, "It's like you're living in your cave."
Classic mum.
Yeah, classic. For those of you wondering why my mother is in the house, it's because I came back to look after my father, not because.
How was your dad? How was your dad?
Typically live with my parents. He's doing very well, actually. He's surprised all the doctors in that he's got movement in his left leg back, which is something they said was going to be biologically impossible. And he's just started having some involuntary movements in his left hand, also something that they said was impossible. And what happened with his leg about 2 weeks ago. So we're hoping that he gets the movement back, even if it's limited.
That's great news.
So that's good.
Oh, fantastic.
Right. Let me see. Architect of Fate says, I missed the stream until now. I'm glad to see Sarah's back online. I suspect it was AA behind the Twitter ban. Because Sarah...
I think it was an agent of Lammy.
Because Sarah always eats the third biscuit.
Oh, that's so true.
No denial, no.
Or in this case, the third cherry.
Very true. I know, I feel like getting a sore tummy now after all these cherries.
Oh, dear. Careful, you'll get...
I recently made cherry pie. Does that make me any more interesting?
Yes. That's
I have a Morello cherry pie in the fridge as well.
Ooh, I like this.
The trouble is, Sarah, if you say your tummy hurts, I'll get dozens of messages from the chat of people volunteering to come and rub your tummy, to come and help you feel better.
Well, feel free to super chat.
I tell you, you say that there's one coming
come
up.
And rub my tummy.
Harry Ann Gladive says, we have 18 months to save the planet. I can't believe you don't care about the 6 months that we have to save us all. For goodness sake, we only have 14 minutes to save the Earth. For fuck's sake. This reminds me of the Bitcoin memes which were going around when that was when cryptocurrency was a thing, and it was all like, I've invested £1,000 in Bitcoin. It's fantastic. I've made £10,000, but I don't know what I'm going to spend my £6,000 on. The £2,000 that I've made. Definitely going to go on a new holiday. I've lost my money. It's just...
God, I don't understand currency banter.
Oh, dear. Sutsgoen, just donating like mad today. Thank you very much. Valued supporter there. Says, burn Brussels. Certainly. And now, Sarah...
Yes, but that would mean the sacrifice of, what's it called? Is it Neuhaus? Not sure. They're the chocolate makers next to Sprungly.
I'm sure that the strong would survive. and
chocolate.
the chocolate makers. Yeah, but do you really need that much Belgian chocolate, Sarah?
Yes.
Well, Neuhaus, I believe, they are the of all the Belgian chocolates, they are the star performers, if you know what I mean. So they are the company of companies when it comes to Belgian chocolates.
Now, speaking of cherries and chocolate, actually, I quite like cherries. I quite like chocolate, but one thing I cannot stand is a Black Forest Gâteau.
What's wrong with you?
I do not like the combination of the chocolate and the cherry. It doesn't work for me.
But have your Black Forest Gâteaux never had kirsch in them?
Kirsch? No.
Kirsch.
Kirsch. Okay, my pronunciation not great. I was trying to speak Lithuanian earlier to one of my Lithuanian friends, and they could not stop laughing. So forgive me for my poor pronunciation.
Just microaggressing against that.
Say it again. Kirsch. I know what it is, but
cherry stuff.
Kirsch.
It's cherry liqueur.
Yes. I have no idea. It's been years since I've had a Black Forest Gâteau.
Isn't it Japanese?
Sorry?
Isn't it Japanese?
Now I have to look up the etymology of kirsch.
I think it is.
Well, kirsch
from Middle High German.
It comes from Kirsche, which is German for cherry.
And then Cheresium, ancient Greek. Possibly Anatolian origin, apparently. Nowhere near the Far East, I'm afraid. But there we go.
Sorry, what are we talking about? Is kirsch from the Far East or cherries from the Far East?
I mean, kirsch. Kirsch. It's not. Kirsch. Kirsch. It's not from the Far East.
No, it's definitely from the German-speaking world.
Yes,
yeah, that's where it originated.
And further back from the Greek. Okay, Architect of Fate donates $5. Thank you very much. Says, I stand to challenge the Scandinavian coming for Sarah. My credit score is 823.
Oh, honey.
You just know how to get the ladies hot under the collar, Architect of Fate. Fantastic. A slightly more serious question, though, comes from JS, who says, question. Can Boris survive the next 5 months? It is a big question. But it's more about what Boris wants to do, I think, than anything that anyone can do to him. So he obviously has basically the forced trust of Parliament and the party in order to make Brexit happen. But after that, he's got to prove himself in a way that he's not just amenable to the Tory party, which he'll obviously stay in command of, but also to the public at large. So in a way, he may undermine himself if he doesn't call an election and then win by in a general sense. For that, I think that's the only thing which may come in, because otherwise it's just years of the next 3 years will be jibes about how suitable he is for the role when nobody wants him there, except for his 0.86% of the population or whatever it is.
Well, when it comes to Boris, I think there are two things that are worth considering here. One is he did win London against Labour.
Yes.
But the other is, and that is against him, it is that painful poshness. Against
I think people like it.
I think people kind of like the comedy character and whatever, and I think within certain circles, one quite likes sort of the eccentricity of the poshness and whatever.
I would take Boris's demeanour 100 times over "Call Me Dave."
Yeah, but what I'm trying to get at is, do you remember that miracle I spoke of recently of Anne Widdecombe speaking in a Yorkshire mining town in a working man's club?
Oh, did she?
Yes, I mean, that was just one of those things that you sort of your jaw dropped and you just went, hang on.
How did she get done? How did she get done?
The woman is getting a standing ovation, speaking to a working man's club in a Yorkshire mining town. I mean, that is not something you expected ever to see.
The derision in your voice, Britisher, because it's not like you have a particularly personal vendetta against the woman, is it?
But it's just, it is something that was just unthinkable across the board. Nobody could imagine something like that ever.
I mean, presumably they liked what she was saying about Brexit.
And then Brexit comes along and suddenly turns the entire political landscape on its head. I mean, if you would have thought of something like that happening 20 years ago, they would have pelted her with food, you know. So now you have to ask yourself.
Just imagining Britisher in the front with his cherries, throwing them.
Oh, cherry milkshake.
But now you have to sort of ask yourself, if you put Boris into a similar environment, but not a sort of not a Brexit environment. So that's what basically enabled Anne Widdecombe to do that. But if you put Boris Johnson in front of a kind of working class environment, you know, and he does his kind of posh buffoon act, to what extent does it go down well?
I think they preferred that to the middle class intelligentsia. Does that make sense? That's infinitely more likable.
There's also something about it is ineffably British and very affable because of it, and to a certain proportion of the population, say, who are sick to death of things like the immigration debate and so on, and a lot of activists, you know, trying to weigh in and get their own way. There's something about the the old boy who's come from Eton, kind of more traditional British leader, you know, from the way the Tories have always been. That is a relief almost to the tumultuous people who have tried aside from that. Do you know what I mean?
What you're talking about is that sort of wonderful effect one saw in the series Sharp, where he is promoted from the ranks because he saved Wellington's life. So he's made from sergeant, he's turned into a lieutenant. And what he finds is that the ordinary men don't like it.
Yeah.
And in that, you know,
he's become a knob, basically.
Yes. So they understand that their officers are of the blood. You know, they are touched by grace, so to speak. But for one of them to become something like that is different. That they won't accept. So I think that's to a certain extent what you're trying to touch on here. I understand that to an extent, but you know, sort of from the people I've spoken to, I'm not sure, and that's the same thing I've always said about Jacob Rees-Mogg. I think the poshness and the almost sort of painful privilege, you know, the painful levels of privilege of those people, can work against you. The one thing I would sort of like to put forward there as an example is what was he called? The last Tory to be effectively sort of ennobled. You know, that basically we've had commoners as prime ministers ever since the man whose name I forget. This is what happens on live stream. If you've got the opportunity to think, the name comes to you immediately. And it was basically concluded after him that we can never have a kind of aristocrat as prime minister again. The people just don't wear it. And this is what I mean. This is kind of what I'm sort of trying to get at. That yes, they're not aristocratic. Yes, but they're very, very posh, and they've been to Eton, and you know, and to me, I'm not sure to what extent the public at large is willing to swallow it.
I don't know about the long term, but I definitely think for particularly this parliamentary kind of session, as it were, this kind of term of office, they'll stomach it and enjoy it for a little bit. Obviously, going forward, I don't think so.
Well, I think what makes this different is, just as with Anne Widdecombe, with Boris Johnson, the rules are different. A, because he's Boris and he knows how to make himself likable, but Brexit changes everything. So basically, it's drawn different lines of them and us, if you know what I mean. So it isn't, you know, whereas previously it was kind of the posh against the non-posh. Now it's kind of Brexiteers against the non-Brexiteers.
But I also think that there's an element that the middle class are the majority, and if there's anything the middle class hate more than the snobs, it's another middle class person pretending to be a snob. You know what I mean? So I think Makuta Pterodax also says the person you're thinking of, Britisher, was the Earl of Salisbury, Robert Gascoigne Cecil, as the last person to try it on.
That wasn't actually the person I was thinking of, but whatever. Moving on.
I have many when the Britisher was 20 memes coming in at my request in the chat. In fact, I posted it and then I clicked copy and paste and instead accidentally pasted the link to join this particular Hangout session. I had to issue a swift retraction quite there. But we have a 20-year-old Britisher married Anne Widdecombe. A 20-year-old Britisher... let me see.
I can sense an Anne Widdecombe theme emerging here.
You swam the channel in 1940 with a Prussian aristocrat on your back.
On your back.
When the Britisher was 20, he ate the cosmic egg. 20-year-old Britisher.
I didn't catch it, did I?
Apparently not. You poached it, actually. Intentionally foiled the Darien scheme. I have no idea what the Darien scheme is.
Yes, of course. That was me. Yes, admittedly. That was entirely me. Yes.
When the Britisher was 20, he invented the very words he is now referring to. When the Britisher was 20, he was.
Yes. And let there be light. Yes.
Yes. When the Britisher was 20, he was already going on about the Romans, but the Romans were not about yet. When the Britisher...
I was the one who named the Romans.
Obviously.
It's because they moved around a lot.
In boats and they rowed. When the Britisher was 19, he ate the cosmic chicken.
Oh, poor chicken.
When the Britisher was 20, he hid... You know it's not a real chicken, Sarah.
Yeah.
It is not a real chicken. You don't need to feel sad for the imaginary cosmic chicken.
But it's cosmic. I don't know.
When the Britisher was 20, he hid the fallen Madonna, the one with the big boobies, in his cellar to sell after the war was over.
That was after I hid it in a hollowed out knockwurst.
Don't talk about your bratwurst on stream, Britisher.
Ew, enough.
I think all you're doing is pointing out that you've never watched Allo Allo.
I've watched some Allo Allo.
Well, then you would know that it was hidden in a hollowed out knockwurst.
Yes, a 20-year-old Britisher told Benjamin Franklin to go fly a kite after he was annoyed by him asking if he'd found his lost keys. When Britisher was 20, Anne Widdecombe still had pigtails.
Ooh, sassy.
20-year-old Britisher betrayed Jesus to the Romans.
Oh, Britisher, how could you?
It was all.
You're such a Judas.
He was meek and
mild. It was all in the ineffable plan.
Architect of Fate says a 20-year-old Britisher stabbed his brother with the jawbone of a donkey whilst first experiencing envy.
Jawbone of a donkey.
This is a Cain and Abel reference. I thought it was a rock, but you know. When the Britisher was 20, he saved Wellington, was promoted to officer. His fellow officers then looked down on him. He is still bitter.
Oh, very, very bastards.
A 20-year-old Britisher was then cucked by Anne Widdecombe after they married.
Imagine being cucked by Anne Widdecombe.
Imagine.
How bad does life have to be?
That's how the Conservative Party feels now, isn't it?
True enough.
When Britisher was 20, he was the 28th knife that downed Caesar. Poor Caesar.
There you go. So basically, I was the one who stabbed him when he was already finished, lying at the feet of the statue of Pompey.
The 20-year-old...
You do, of course, know that he lay at the feet of the statue of Pompey.
Yes.
Oh, moving on.
I do know.
The 20-year-old Britisher got a little bit tipsy and ended up creating the Gordian knot while trying to lace up his sandals. That's my favourite so far. I love the inventive ones.
Me too. He comes up with that.
At the tender age of 20, I like this one too. The Britisher became Prime Minister under the alias of his adopted father, William Pitt, to become Pitt the Younger.
One of my favourite Pitts.
Sisgoen says, "Let there be light. Enough of this memeing. He's not an electrician. He may not be a mere mortal, but he's not on our level.
He's not one of us." Is that what he's saying?
Clearly not. A 20-year-old Britisher laid the first brick in the Great Wall of China. and he in fact built the entire Great Wall. I'm ad-libbing here. You built the entire Great Wall to prevent the Mongol horde from stealing the tea that you were bringing back from further.
This is entirely wrong. This is
Go
entirely
on.
wrong.
Go ahead.
I was actually at the Royal Court of China at the time, and they were constantly, reports were coming in saying how the Mongols were raiding this and the Mongols were raiding that. And the emperor was kind of, tearing his hair out, going, "Well, what shall I do? This is ridiculous." And all I said was, "Well, what can you do? I mean, what do you want to do? Build a wall?"
And make the Mongolians pay for it? So,
you did a good job, Richard.
Anyway, enough of that. I will come back to some of these maybe at the end, but thank you everyone who's contributed to those.
Now, I must ask, you've never heard of the Darien Project?
I've not, unless I have heard of it ages ago.
The Darien Project is when the Scots decided to have their own colony in America.
Mm.
And
yes, I do remember reading this.
They did a lot of money raising in Scotland. I mean, a huge amount of the Scottish wealth kind of went into this project. And it was a hellhole. It was just about one of the worst possible places where you could start a colony. Sort of mosquito and swamp infested place in hell, if you know what I mean. At the same time, of course, they also made the mistake of founding their colony on the Spanish Main. So not on one of the islands, where you've got a certain amount of safety buffer. At the same time, there was a lot of sort of diplomatic shenanigans, particularly by the English, to kind of try and prevent them succeeding. But in the end, it did fail spectacularly. And it failed not really due to English intervention or whatever. It was just the wrong plan in the wrong place.
I'm just looking at an old newspaper headline from the era. It just says, "A mistake."
You have to imagine that Scotland nigh on bankrupted itself.
Crikey.
In doing that.
Oh.
And therefore, the reason it is so important, the Darien Project, is because the English obviously then made their move. And they got in touch with some of the Scottish nobles, and Scotland had its own parliament and so on. And they said, "Well, look, our crown has been united now for considerable time. It's time we became one and the same nation. And I'm sure we could help you recover some of your losses. We could make it worth your while." And therefore, quite a few of the Scottish nobility that voted for the Act of Union actually did so in order to recover some of the money that basically the Exchequer paid them in order not to go completely bankrupt.
It's times like this that you remind me why I have you on this stream, Richard. I swear we've had like 5 anecdotes from different periods, and only one of them has been about the.
I never bothered to fact check either, so he could just be
spouting all sorts of.
But I still enjoy it.
I believe actually Tailed Feature made a very good clip about that. He made a clip about the Darien Project. Yes. And I think you will find it's absolutely true. Yes, the Darien Project wrecked Scotland. And the English then basically saw, okay, this is a chance to basically put the nation together once and for all. And obviously there were already a considerable amount of Scottish lowlanders that wanted the Union anyway. But yes, it definitely helped grease the wheels that basically England was much richer, much more powerful, and therefore had the money to basically bail out some of these bankrupt families that nonetheless had a vote in the parliament.
Fascinating. I have missed a super chat. We will come back to this. Scowen did donate again. He's just on fire today. Says chocolate is degenerate and is not bacon nor potatoes. So
chocolate is not bacon and potatoes. That is true, but it is not degenerate. And anybody who thinks it is degenerate is an outright barbarian and doesn't understand civilization as we know it.
He doesn't have to. All he has to do is come to the coast with his axe.
True enough.
Makuta Pterodax, back on topic though, says the Darien scheme essentially sank a boat that had a chest which contained about a quarter of Scotland's GDP at the time. Gold coins.
Orcs. Has it been found?
No, I think that
Sarah,
is...
I know what you're going to do for your summer.
I love a treasure hunt.
Shall we go? Very
have you actually ever seen some of the footage of of them finding a real life Spanish galleon?
Yes, yeah, I love that.
That is just unbelievably fascinating to look at.
It is.
One of the most intriguing things is obviously the gold coin that comes up from the seabed as new because it doesn't tarnish in any way, shape, or form.
Oh no, because of course it hasn't oxidized.
Yes,
has it? Yes.
But the silver that oxidizes.
Yeah.
And what makes it so interesting is the silver has been in wooden chests, and the chests have since long rotted away.
Yeah.
But the oxidization holds the silver coins together.
Oh, so they're stacked up like they were in the chest.
It's actually a kind of cube they bring up from the seabed.
That's
fascinating. I feel sorry for the people who have to basically try and chip them apart without doing any damage.
Well, I think is it in Cadiz? I think there is some Spanish, sort of an old library where all the Spanish records from hundreds of years ago are still being held, and therefore, sort of the treasure hunting today is kind of almost split into two. So at one moment you've got the deep sea divers and things like that, the guys who actually physically go down to the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you've got the kind of the librarians, so to speak, who just sift through old parchment books in order to try and find traces within reports as to where something went down.
I love that. That's wonderful.
It's really you're ruining my fantasy of becoming a treasure hunter and being able to be like a one-man show.
I think Indiana Jones is
Lara Croft, Nathan Drake style.
You see, one of the important things one of the reasons you need to have a bookworm like that is because even if you have a report, even if you find something in black and white that says a ship went down in, say, a treasure fleet, so the other ships in the treasure fleet saw it go down.
Yeah.
So you have a location, you know roughly where it went down. If you now go looking for it, you might find absolutely nothing, because the Spanish themselves might already have raised the treasure. And therefore, what you're looking for is, are there any reports of this actually being lifted? Because what the Spanish, I think, would do is they would have kind of like long ropes between two ships that would sag down into the sea. And they would then kind of trawl through the sea like that, roughly where the ship had gone down, in order to find whether they could get it to snag on something. And hopefully that would be the ship.
Huh.
And then they themselves would send their own divers who would just, obviously no modern equipment, but then, the Caribbean is not necessarily that deep. And of course, particularly if it's run into a reef or a sandbank, it will not be deep sea in that place anyway. So they will just by holding their breath alone, they will go down and, attach whatever, you want to bring up to ropes, so then it can be hauled up from above. So the Spanish themselves raised a lot of the treasure that went down. But in places, yes, one still believes there are masses that are hidden away somewhere and have been completely forgotten. Because if in a storm a galleon got separated from the rest of the fleet, and then somewhere in the middle of the night it hit something and went down, and there were no survivors, how on earth, does anybody ever pinpoint that thereafter?
Sarah, I will take you on a life of adventure and much research.
That's fun. I like reading.
There we go.
I'm not writing.
Sutsgohan says, not so obvious. Don't you come and tell me about civilization, you crooked-toothed, herb-drinking colonial. We liberated you from your oppressive wealth. So thank you for that, Sutsgohan.
I love being a colonial.
And thank you for returning some of that wealth this evening.
An interesting thing just on Spanish galleons.
Yes.
Because they weren't just bringing the treasures from America. They were also bringing the treasures from Japan and the Philippines and China.
Oh, I see.
Because what the Spaniards did is they carried the trade goods and whatever that they got in Far East Asia and carried them across the Pacific, which was at the time effectively their sea. Nobody else had really reached it. Carried it to the west coast of Mexico and then moved it on land across. and then loaded it onto treasure galleons, which then I think from Veracruz they headed to Europe.
That is interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah, I'm just thinking.
Wish I knew more about it, but I did.
Just thinking about the moment. Ratface says have some revealed preference, and as he donates, thank you very much. But I'm just thinking now, in terms of what would it take, Britisher, for us to have a live Fake Accents Unite?
A live fake accents unite.
Which would
this is live.
Like do you know what I mean? In person, recorded live on the table, and including
an evening with.
We could even blur your face.
An audience with.
Yes, yeah, I see. But I think you're looking at one of these things that I don't know whether you would actually be able to survive stepping into my divine presence.
Well, it remains to be seen. But
give it a go.
We see. What were we talking about before we ended up on like anecdotes about Spanish galleons and lost gold?
Absolutely no idea. But that's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I tell you what, I love a good Fake Accents Unite. I hope that everyone in the chat is enjoying themselves as well. We have 310 people watching at the moment, which is fantastic. And
10 of them are actually here to listen to the two of us.
Yes. Everyone else is here for a certain long-eared fellow who has as in a fellow of the as in an associate
of the woodland
of the Woodland Critters Association.
The Woodland Tribe.
A representative of the Woodland Creatures Alliance.
Member of the cast of Watership Down. Yes.
She, as the rabbit, is here to advise strong culling of foxes, preferably and by vicious pack animals, as soon as possible. Thank you very much. We were talking about bits and pieces. Boris Johnson, that sort of thing. What else did I see this week? There was like one other like really big thing that's been happening in the news, and
really big thing. One other really big thing.
Relatively large news thing that's been going on.
Is this international news? Is this national news?
It'd be international news.
International news.
This is definitely away from home.
No.
Is this any of the latest Trump-isms?
Oh, I don't think so. The only Trump thing really has been him tweeting about how he and Boris are basically the same person, and the left failing to meme that they are the same person as well.
The fact that we were almost wiped, well, not the planet wasn't, but a city at any point could have been wiped out by a meteor.
Oh, really?
That then narrowly missed Earth.
Yes. I tell you what, I can't remember it, but I'm just seeing on the BBC that an article has just come out saying, "Don't underestimate Boris Johnson, EU warned." And this just reminds me of that old film about is it Jackie Chan with like he's a drunken master of martial arts or something along that line. And everyone underestimates him because he sways around like a drunkard and then takes everyone out. It's mental. It just reminds me like Boris Johnson turns up and his eccentricity is effectively a shield that makes people basically not deal with the fact that he's able to bend them over the table, basically linguistically and bureaucratically.
You mean Jean-Claude might think there's a fellow drunk in the house?
It's nonsense. When do we get rid of Juncker, actually? Or when does Juncker move on?
Here's the thing. His last day is the 31st of October.
Oh, interesting.
And then we've got, is it Ursula is her name, is the new president?
Von Leiden, yes. It's funny that von Leiden, if not spelled with a Y, but with an I, but pronounced the same way, Leiden means to suffer.
Isn't John Lydon also in Sex Pistols?
Huh.
Yeah.
That's a good
different spelling again. Different spelling again. Yeah.
Good reference. Let me see. I'll tell you something else that did come up though was basically, and here is where it goes completely out of my head as I try and describe what I talk about.
It's a bit like you with that prime minister earlier.
Austerity. That's what it is. Austerity and police numbers in particular, because of course it's been in the news. Boris Johnson, 20,000 new police officers. Because it turns out that the actual numbers of police officers under the Tories haven't really dropped. and that the vast majority of the cuts which took jobs away from the police department were civilian contractors. So that's an interesting sort of thing, because it means that frontline officers in London, which Sadiq Khan has been basically crowing that, or basically moaning that he's not got enough officers to maintain law and order every so often. It turns out that actually his frontline officers, he's lost less than 2% of those.
Hilarious.
And his numbers haven't really dropped at all. And he's the least worst affected. Didn't Boris Johnson call for Sadiq Khan to basically give London back as well?
Yes, I remember. I think I heard something similar. Yes, that he expressed sort of the need for Sadiq Khan to be gone. But when it comes to those things, I would only remind him of the fact that the Labour Party and various other parties are saying similar things about him.
I'm being reminded by the colonials, by the way, that it's von Leyen, not von Leyden. So you watch yourself, Britisher. You're on report.
Well, I mean, she's German, and I'm not sure that I would go for von Leyen. There is a D in there, isn't there?
Apparently not. It's Ursula von der Leyen. Von der Leyen.
In that case, I apologise.
Right, Sarah, slap the man.
I agreed. I just agreed because
give him a swift herring to the face.
Swift herring.
But, no, I was looking at austerity of all things, and I was really curious because austerity doesn't mean what we think it means, or what most people think it means. And didn't you get into a conversation about this on Twitter, Britisher? About
you would have to narrow it down given the number of conversations I've been having recently.
Okay, conversation static budget, ring a bell? And how a static budget is a cut in real terms over the time.
Yes, because it's basically cut by the inflation. Yes.
Yes. So I saw some stuff saying that basically, even under the quote worst of Tory austerity, the budget was really only reduced by 0.886% or something.
Yes, but I also pointed out in a follow-up tweet at the time, whereby I think expenditure in some areas was protected, and in some cases, the NHS and whatever might actually have risen.
Yes, they definitely did.
So basically, the overall budget stayed roughly static, but that means that in some areas it will have been cut.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah. And I think we do remember that at the time, certain departments were asked to do 20% cuts, weren't they? And then others were ring-fenced.
Yes, definitely. The NHS, certain benefits were ring-fenced.
Yeah, I think also education was ring-fenced.
Yes.
But places like the military or whatever, I think, got it in the teeth.
Yes, I definitely, because I was in the military at the time. It was just, all this money and it's going away, by the way. But because there was a debate around whether or not we would keep Trident at the time. Excuse me, Architect of Fate, thank you for your $5. But he does say, tea is nothing more than water made more vegan. Therefore, it is the primary reason that the empire fell. Vegans have been ruining civilization ever since the dawn of tea.
Well, I would point out that two of the most profitable trade goods of all times are tea and sugar.
Both of which we sell.
Yes, put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Where was I? Austerity, yes. And this is something I'm going to come on to in, I think, a bit more detail tomorrow when good old Sargon of Akkad comes on the old stream. And I talk about the relationship between government and its responsibilities versus the rights of the people. Mm-hmm. So what the people have a right to from their government, and or what they have a right to be free from, and what responsibilities the government actually has. Because you see figures like Jeremy Corbyn, certainly, although you do see it on the right as well, you see it with the Conservatives, talking about how we have a responsibility to provide. And he says this from the point of view of trying to speak from the population, but he's speaking specifically about Parliament. So the politicians have a responsibility to provide this to protect someone's rights. And I'm really curious about how the where the borderline is between what rights the government should protect. You get obviously the hardliners like the academic agent who say the government should only protect
property rights,
and your person is your property, so that's why we have a police force and that sort of thing. But you should protect your assets. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have people saying, I have a right to a bathroom. I have a right to... Like, one of the weird articles I saw today was like talking about how if the government didn't recognize your gender identity as being separate to male or female, it wasn't recognizing your right to exist.
Yes.
So there's that side of it as well, and I'm really curious whether or not
invalidating your existence. Yes.
Yeah, whether or not we can have a conversation about where the line is and everything there. So that's something to look forward to in greater detail, I hope, tomorrow. Although I'll be bringing some other stuff in case that conversation falls a bit flat. We'll see. And there we go. Either of you noticed anything particular that you would like to talk about over the previous couple of weeks, or just in general that comes to mind right now?
No, I've been avoiding the news a little bit recently.
I spent the last sort of 3 or 4 days on the beach, so I can't.
Yeah, I know.
Aside from the storm, this is a trouble. Although I had my 2 lovely lady friends who did suntan me up, and they missed my shoulders, and I have a horrible sunburn and a really patchy tan across.
I've got this image of you being,
lathered.
Lathered in sun oil as you're lying there. Yes.
But they missed your shoulders. Can't get the workers these days, I tell you.
I notice Sadiq Khan is continuing to push for rent control measures in London, and basically bemoaning the fact that New York can do it and he can't. I did actually make a video on this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, talking about how Sadiq Khan basically doesn't understand economics. He's doing this because 68% of London would be happy with rent control, even though left and right economists both agree that it's a terrible measure that destroys cities and ruins rents. And at the end of the day, even removing rent control isn't enough to deal with the wider repercussions of it, because the market is so distorted by it. So if you like that sort of thing, check that out. And that sort of thing. So Scowen has done it again and says, you don't even have a right to live in a large city if you cannot afford it. People like that are too comfortable being parasites. I tend to agree.
Parasite is perhaps a little stronger word to use on your fellow members of the human race.
Yes, in a general sense, I agree.
I agree with him.
Do you remember when we first met, Sarah, and you were like, Mark, you're such a leftist.
I'm such a lefty, I couldn't bear it.
And now what am I?
Look at you.
What even am I at this point?
I'm going.
I'm still a centrist. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm still centrist.
You're not. Rubbish.
My latest.
If I am apparently the model of the fence-sitting centrist, then where would you regard yourself as being? To the right or to the left of the fence upon which I sit like a throne?
This is why nobody believes your story about the Great Wall of China, because clearly you built it to be the largest fence ever, and it got out of hand.
Well, yes, of course. Yeah. Undoubtedly.
When it comes to the political leaders, it's really funny. I took the second ever Fake Accents Unite, which people are obviously more than welcome to come back and watch. They're all still available, unlike certain unpopular opinions, which have still been removed. But basically, we went through the speaker test, didn't we, Britisher? If you remember, all the way back then, and it took
a long time ago. Yes,
and it took nearly 3 hours, and even that was with rushing some of the last questions.
Because I was always saying, well, that depends, surely, with every one of the questions.
And it was always interesting because there's a very slight difference between slightly agreeing with something and slightly disagreeing with something, and because both of them move you in a certain direction, it's more.
And very often it simply depends on understanding the question right from the beginning. So,
but anyway,
in what way is this question meant? That is
So the reason I'm referencing this is because I did a speaker test way back then, and I was about 4 squares to the left, I was, left of centre, and 1 square down from the centre line towards libertarianism. And then over the last year and a half, I've just been drifting slowly. I made it to the centre line, and then I did one test once when I was really angry, and I ended up dead in the centre of where a conservative should be. And now I'm not too far off that in my regular thinking, apparently.
Now you're approaching the ledge.
So I blame Sarah entirely.
Come join us.
I blame you entirely, Sarah.
This is one of my worries when it comes to what people are liking to call sort of the based cabinet and whatever. That one of my worries is that the Tories go all out Tory, and basically their centre on that test kind of just slides towards the edge, and then they lose the popular support. So a lot of their renaissance, so to speak, is due to the fact that because of the changed landscape, they are for the first time in decades, we are seeing such a thing as a working class Tory. This is something we haven't seen for 50 years, really.
Yes, I think Boris in Parliament said we are now the party that represents the working class, and I don't know if they actually represent them, but it's certainly more true.
Yes, but this is what I mean. If you now get sort of the cabinet of the academic agent's dream, and suddenly everything becomes completely Austrianified and whatever, you will see that change in a hurry.
Yeah.
And I think there is the danger of just giving it away, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but you can always change it back again.
But, well, that's just it. In politics, you can't just always change things back again. That's not true.
You don't really believe in cyclical politics, then, do you?
Well, it's this thing that once you put it like this: how many laws that get introduced, which one party may have opposed or whatever at the time, how many of those laws ever get overturned once that party then comes into power? No, they just continue on. And that's just it. That once something is there, it kind of becomes part of the whole fabric of power and the way things work. And then they continue on. You see very few reversals of law. Where basically, okay, this was a mistake. The previous administration brought this in. We are overturning this.
I mean, even if you look at the two big changes within the last generation, say, so the Tories to Labour to Blair, and then Brown back to the Tories, and you look at it and you go, neither of those parties revoked anything that the previous parties did.
Precisely.
All layered more laws on. Yes.
Yes. I mean, the most typical one, I guess, that's the one where AA would completely agree, is tax. You've got the government sort of saying, "Oh, we're going to impose a tax on that," and then you've got whichever one is the party that is the opposition screaming its head off, saying, "Oh no, this is outrageous." And then when they come to power, do they actually revoke that tax?
Well, they realise that the previous budget was all costed up based on that new tax, and actually if they remove it, they'd have to cut services which people wouldn't like, or they'd have to cut civil servants and jobs which people wouldn't like.
And therefore it's very difficult ever to reverse these things, and that's why that idea that you can always change it again. No, you can't. Political experience would kind of show that you can't. In reality, once these things are there,
it's hard to dislodge. Yeah,
it's very, very hard to dislodge.
I still maintain that the biggest battle of our time that should be united around is the revocation of the Communications Act 2003, in particular Article 127.
Yes, I've seen several people sort of post pretty much along those lines. I'm very skeptical about that.
I don't think it's achievable in the current state of things. I'm just saying that I think that's the thing which needs.
But what I mean is, I think, having in the past opposed this law and that, and got absolutely nowhere with it.
Yes.
And having seen this law or that actually get clobbered in the courts, and thinking, we've won. We've actually overturned that law. And then see it within a matter of years kind of return just in some other form. I don't believe in we need to get rid of this individual law when it comes to censorship or that individual law. What we need to do is we need to change the overall philosophy, because otherwise that game you get in fun fairs where kind of, I don't know if it's a hamster or something, they kind of stick out and you kind of have to hit them with a mallet, and there's constantly another one popping up somewhere.
Whack-a-mole.
Oh well, yeah, whack-a-mole then. Yeah. It's like that. You basically you'll hit one, but there will just be another one popping up somewhere else.
Sorry, it just makes me laugh because as a child growing up on my grandmother's farm, we used to play whack-a-mole for real. My grandma would be like, "Time to collect all the baby moles," and we used to love it. And what we didn't see until we were a little bit older was the fact that she took them into the barn and drowned them.
Oh well, there you go. Healthy attitude. Well, you will of course understand that with my having grown up on the continent, I've never been sort of imbued with this, oh, the poor little cuddly animals attitude.
No.
It's never, but yes, when it comes to things like the Communications Act and things like that, I think it's not the individual law that needs changing. You need to have an overall sea change in attitude. It's the attitude that introduced the law that needs to change, because otherwise you get rid of that particular law, but with the attitude remaining, it will simply find its way, to the fore again via another course.
You have only to look at something like Theresa May's Snoopers Charter, which snuck its way straight back in as soon as she was Prime Minister. Yes. So, Sarah, we have a career set up. We're going to hunt treasure in the Caribbean. But where should we elope to when Britain becomes unlivable? Which particular island?
Oh God, is there anywhere left that isn't?
I had one of the things. One of my a person that I know, he's a friend on Facebook, is looking at moving to Japan to escape the current political climate. And he's like, oh, he's been to Japan. The people there seem based on immigration and stuff like that. And we were spamming him with articles about diversity and inclusivity in Japan and how the media over there felt about it and stuff like that.
Oh, really? Is it coming for Japan?
Yeah, it seems to be. A lot of the population is just like, no, we don't really care.
Well, if I may point out, if you're heading for Japan, there is another option to looking for sunken treasure, and that is in the South China Sea. I think there are one or two rocks that just stick out of the South China Sea, just as if they were kind of some kind of petrified tree, if you know what I mean. So there's no shallow or anything like that. It's just basically deep sea, and the next thing you know, you hit something.
You hit the needles, effectively.
And that apparently cost the Western world quite a few ships. And particularly the ships you need to look out for are Dutch, because they had a habit of trading all sorts of goods and carrying back to Holland Chinese porcelain, so China.
Ooh.
And if they got to the bottom of the sea and are still in one piece, they are worth absolute fortunes, because they are several centuries old and they are the original.
Oh, I'm going to look that up.
So you don't necessarily always have to find the gold treasure.
Who would technically
find
own that?
something that is exceptionally valuable that was in the cargo, then yes, it can be worth absolute yonks. And I remember seeing a program once on them having brought up the treasure from the bottom of the South China Sea with a Dutch flight, I think they're called, aren't they? That went down, and it was just chock full with sort of antique china, so to speak.
Wow, that sounds wonderful.
Lovely.
Get your flippers, Mark.
Sorry?
Get your flippers.
Get my flippers on, yeah.
Yeah, so as I say, you can base yourself in Japan, and then once in a while
Oh yes, I forgot.
With your exploration vessel, you can head into the South China Sea.
I just think here I could just buy, an earlship or a barony on Sealand.
Of course,
It could always end up there. But the idea of living on an oil rig less appealing. Lovely. Well, we are coming towards the end of the show. Thank you very much to everyone who's donated for all this stuff. Architect of Fate says, if the government is invalidating people's humanity, can we finally declare that communists are not people?
Yes, I love that.
I do like that. Fantastic. You've absolutely smashed it out of the park this evening, Chad. So as promised, I'm going to do the honourable thing, make myself the present to everyone. I'm going to turn my camera on.
Isn't this now where we need the soundtrack from Psycho?
What's the doggle called?
I think not. She's called Dottie. Dorothy is her full name. But let me just
Average name.
take.
Oh, the beard.
Take her. Oh, I know, right? Like,
Yes, as I said earlier, the full Ivan Rebrov. Just Google it, folks.
So there we are. So she's hiding basically down here, and I think she wants to go out, but we'll see what we can do. And I've knocked my chair over. Fantastic. Here we go. Right. Dottie. Hello. There she is.
It's definitely not a showbiz dog, is it?
Dottie, come here. Say hello to the chat.
Oh, hi, Dottie.
Hello.
Oh, hello. Is she a new dog, Mark?
Woof, woof.
She's not new.
I didn't know you had a dog. I don't remember you. Why don't I know that?
She's 8 years old, and we've had her since she was very young. Little puppy that she was.
Oh, she's a cutie. She's interested in us.
No, I think she's more interested in going to bed. It's past her bedtime, bless her.
Oh.
So we actually keep her in a little cage. I say little cage. It's a big cage. And we didn't want to keep her in a cage, but she has Stockholm syndrome from when she was a puppy, and she needed to go in there so that she wouldn't run around and jump on the furniture and tear everything up. Cute. And then we said, "Oh, okay, you don't need to sleep in a cage anymore now." But she loves it. She absolutely adores sleeping in a cage. So she always makes sure that she puts herself in there towards the end.
Oh, that's nice.
Bless. Everyone's saying my Discord is going to love this. Yes, because there's a channel in my Discord called the Hall of Faces, which is run by one of my people. And basically, whenever I show my face on stream, they cut sections of it out to use for memes. So there is. Run by
one of your people. I love that.
Architect of Fate says, if there was a place to rent cuddle time with puppies, Sarah would be much more broke.
I'm sort of going, oh, that's lovely, but I don't really like animals.
That's fair enough. He's called Dottie.
Yes. That's why, of course, you hunt them down, don't you? You cruel, heartless woman.
It's true. I'm such a psycho.
Yeah, I don't know about that, Sarah. I mean, what else is there? So there's a stream going on tomorrow with Sargon of Akkad. Was there anything else that I wanted to reference? It's the same time, by the way. It's 8:30, so a little bit earlier than Unpopular Opinions would usually be.
Do you want to hear something absolutely remarkable? I've just checked, and because I just checked on my own channel just to sort of see how the latest video was doing, and I just noticed a green dollar sign. And I thought, oh my God, is it possible? Could it be? So I checked my email, and yes, indeed. Hi, the Britisher. Great news. After manually reviewing your video, we've determined that it is suitable for all advertisers. Thanks, the YouTube team.
Fantastic.
This is the funny thing. This is
the third week, isn't it?
Third week in a row that they've decided that it's actually suitable for advertising.
You're back in the game.
My viewing figures seem to be on their way back up again. So I don't quite know exactly what is happening. But I mean, they're still always, doing it for, effectively demonetizing it. I mean, it says, not suitable for all advertisers, but in effect, that means very few adverts get shown. but it also means very little promotion gets done.
We can continue this conversation in a moment. I do just want to get through the last few messages.
Knock yourself out.
That's there, of different things that I want going on. There is a. I'm after a new piece of channel art, so you can find the specs for the banner art on YouTube channels. I'm looking for one which says "Fake Accents Unite" with a picture of myself on the left and a picture of the Britisher on the right, or vice versa, however you want to do it. Nice and colourful. Something which will pop up when I do streams. That's a bit more fun to look at than the plain purple text that's there. So quite happy to pay £30 to anyone who can come up with something that we think is suitable for that. And other than that, yes, I think that's everything.
Can I ask, was mine the best piece of banner art you got after your last request?
Did you? What was it you? What was it that you sent me? I can't even remember.
It actually triggered you to send me a photograph of your military days.
Oh, good grief! Yes, that is going back some.
It involved the Eurofighter.
Yeah. Oh, yes. You put up one of me in a Eurofighter, and I said, actually, yes, I have actually been in one of those.
it was just remarkable that there was your head sticking out of a Eurofighter in almost the same fashion, just perhaps less comical.
I do just want to encourage everyone that there will be a video, hopefully, every day this week. I'm challenging myself to see if I can make a video every day.
What is wrong with you?
Whether that takes the form of a stream or a video remains to be seen, but I will be trying to work on some stuff. So hopefully you'll be seeing quite a lot more of basically the UO team. When it comes to memes, the more memes that can be submitted about Britisher being 20 years old and doing different things, please submit them to me on Twitter or through the Discord. More than happy that. And please, I'd just like to put out basically a call for the Discord to become a bit more active, because there's plenty of people in there, but they don't talk nearly as much as they should. And it'd be great. This is, in fact, the last Fake Accents Unite where we will be able to use Google Hangouts.
Oh.
Because it's going away on the 1st of August. So tomorrow's stream will be the last stream that I do using it as well. And the Britisher will have to learn a new way of doing things. So it's going to be fun. He's got no choice.
This is just unacceptable.
We're going to have to put things there. There is a link in the description to the Discord. If you've been previously purged, it was because you were inactive, but it's all good now. And thank you.
We've seen the fall of Troy, fall of the Roman Empire, the Black Death, and now this. I mean, how much more am I supposed to put up with?
So thank you very much to everyone for watching. Thank you very much to my guests for joining me. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Britisher. I love you too.
Oh, of course, anytime.
Love you guys.
Fantastic. And so until next time, and to tomorrow for me, and till next week for the next Fake Accents Unite, we'll see you then. Take care, everyone, and good night.
Bye.